Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Week 8 Friday Night Drive update show. We're going to break this down a little bit and try to figure out exactly what has happened this evening. I'm trying to figure out right now a little bit about how to use this format. I haven't really had a lot of experience with it, but we'll start to go as we go along. Let's talk about a couple of things that I've noticed so far. I've probably got about 40% of tonight's scores processed into my system. Uh, a few of the most notable things that I've noticed so far. Uh, we can talk about a few teams that have pretty much earned their way into the field, pretty much guaranteeing spots that were not in the grouping that I had posted previously. The first one in Class 1A, there's going to be a movement there. Madison, team over by St. Louis, picked up a win over Anna Jonesboro tonight. That was a close call, a 50-50 game in my estimation. Madison was able to come out with that win. I wasn't sure they were going to be able to get to 5 victories. Now it looks like they obviously are. So Madison in the field, that's going to show a shift that's going to move the team that's currently on the bubble down into the 2A classification. I'll try not to get too much into the weeds about who's moving into what classification. I'll try to talk a little bit more about the things that are happening in regards to actually who is going to get in and who isn't. Secondly, Burlington Central's victory over Cary Grove has not necessarily assured Burlington Central a spot on the field, but it has assured that the Class 6A state champions will not be in the field. That was their 5th loss on the season. And while there's a discussion about whether or not we're going to have teams with 4 wins get into the actual field itself, Cary Grove will not be one of those teams. I think to be in that discussion, you're going to need at least 45, 46 points to be even in the race for something like that if we do need 4-win teams. But we're now at a situation where, a lot conference, Cary Grove, the maximum amount of points that they can get if they finish 4 and 5 is 41. Can't go up, can't go down. That's one of the things about a lot conference. So the defending Class A 6A state champions will not be defending that crown. So they are out of the chase. Burlington Central, who's been playing really good over the second half of the season, now needs a win in Week 9 to assure their place. They are currently sitting at 4 and 4. They're one of probably what will be about 50 or 60 teams that will have a 4 and 4 record heading into Week 9. I haven't gotten that far yet in regards to looking through the situation in regards to them and how many of those 4 and 4 teams that we're going to have, because as we do that, we're gonna figure out basically what's going on. So now we're gonna start to break down a few like ticky-tacky things. And as I'm going through the results, I've got a second screen up here where I'm starting to dig through the scores that I haven't put into my system yet. If I see something that is offline, that is not necessarily one of those things that we're going to have to factor into the field, we have to sit there and look at the general context of where it fits in. A few other things that I've noticed so far from the scores that I do have. Another thing that has emerged this evening is Cahokia, a team that I did not have in the field, defeated Belleville Altoff tonight. That alone would not have assured them a spot in the field just yet. But however, that win did clinch them their conference title. So since there are 6 teams in the South 7 Conference, Cahokia will be in the field as a conference champion, regardless of what happens in Week 9. So when you're looking at in terms of what has to happen, moving forward with them and the schools in that conference, that's kind of been a wide open conference all year long. There's another team in that league had to take a couple of forfeit losses, Mount Vernon, that won tonight in kind of a toss of a coin game, at least in my evaluating of the two teams. So now they've kind of worked their way back into the mix, but they are not necessarily in a situation where they're in, but Cahokia is in. They have clinched that berth. So so far those are the bigger breakers, I guess, in terms of what we have as in teams getting in that maybe we're not. One of the teams that I think improved their situation tonight was Nazareth. They obviously put themselves into they needed to get to a 4-4 situation. They won comfortably this evening. They'll head into a game next week with a fellow 4-4 Bennett, which I wasn't really sure where that week 9 game was going to go. I'm a lot more confident now that I think Bennett's going to win that game than I was before. Bennett had a rough time with Joliet Catholic tonight, so that will be a 4-4 showdown game where the winner obviously gets in because they'll be 5-4. If Nazareth were to lose that game, they are a strong contender as a 4-win team to get in. Bennett, not as much. So obviously Nazareth would like to win that game, but I think they may have a few outs if they happen to lose it. But I've kind of changed my perspective on that game. In the week 9 projection, you will most likely see me having Nazareth in the field at 5-4, while Bennett will no longer be included in the grouping. So I think those are the primary ones that I've noticed. If anybody's got any questions generally about what they maybe saw tonight or some other things that are going on, I can try to answer those kind of as we go here. But for the most part, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to kind of be inputting scores and basically trying to get a better feel for the things that I have not seen so far this evening. Like I said, I've probably got about 40% of the scores in, and that's what I'm gonna start focusing on now. So, I'm looking for scores that kind of set off the radar right now in terms of what's going on with you know with some of the games that tonight. What we're looking at is a lot of 4-win teams, situations of that nature that we have to figure out who is going where. I'm trying right now, like I said, I don't have a ton of experience with this format right now. I'm trying to get a screen share going here so you can watch as I'm inputting the games that I have, um, and I'll just continue kind of like speaking through um, as we go. There we go. Okay, so all right. So Chrome tab. I'm gonna open up Enroll here. All right. So um, I believe you can see my screen right now. So I'm gonna kind of try to pop back and forth to see if there are any questions going on. But I believe you can see what I'm doing in here in terms of you know what I'm working with, and you can see as we go. I'm just in the process of kind of finishing up the Chicago area scores that I do have in. I use, just in case you're curious, I use about 5 different sources to collect scores before I go to Twitter and have people try to help me out if they can. Um, so that's what I'm doing. So right now I'm kind of starting with the Chicago area scores that I have in, and I will move from there to putting together the scores uh, of out of the Chicagoland area that I get, and then I'll check a third or a fourth source for the ones that I'm missing. Usually, after I get through most of my sources, I'm down to about 5 or 6 scores from the evening that I have not been able to find. Um, right now, like I said, at about 40%. There were 196 Friday night games that were played this evening. There might be a forfeit in there. There might be a game or two that got shifted to Saturday, and I did not know that. So that's where we're at when we start this process. Like I said, about 200 games on your average Friday night. Um, just to give you a quick primer in case you're not totally familiar with how all of this works. I mean, obviously, all games affect the playoff point situation. So that's why you have to concern yourself with every single game, even if there's a game between like a 1-5 teams and of 0-6 team. You're like, well, why do you need to worry about that? That's because those playoff points are assigned to every opponent on that team's schedule. So while a 1-win team might not seem like it's very interesting to the grand scheme of the playoff schemes, but if you need that playoff point from that team, as a playoff team, that's where it comes into play. So that's why we have to look at every single game that comes in. Every game has an impact. It's why later this evening, I'll be looking at the out-of-state opponents that some schools play to see how they did, because it also affects the playoff point type of situation. So basically, when you're looking at all of these things, that is what it comes down to. So right now, I'm looking right now. I'm seeing that Marist 144-30 over Carmel. I'm not seeing a lot of scores right now that are really throwing me off. As we go through the Chicagoland scores, there were a couple of games that were a little bit closer than I thought, but for the most part, um, we're getting what I thought we would get. Like I said, Nazareth before with a big win over Montini tonight. That effectively knocks Montini out of the picture. They are another team that it would be a hard climb. We would have to need a lot of 4-win teams if they were to able to win their week 9 game over Joliet Catholic, which obviously is not an easy charge to take care of. But Montini at 3-5 right now looks like they are pretty much done in terms of getting into the playoffs, because even with a week 9 win, no guarantees for a team in that nature with 4 wins. So St. Rita got a 26-15 win over Providence. Providence was leading that game early on. Providence tends to give them pretty good games, so but I was pretty surprised that they had taken out that early lead, but St. Rita able to rally and get that win. So Providence at 4-4 right now with a treasure trove of playoff points, needs a win over St. Lawrence to get in. They would be another team, if they happen to lose that game, would have a pretty good chance of getting in as a 4-win team if we need them. It's still too early for me to really make a concrete opinion on whether or not I think that's still in place. Right now, I believe what I've seen so far today is 4 teams unexpected that are now in the field or projected to get into the field based on tonight's results, and 3 teams that I had in as not getting into the field now, even though I had them in the field earlier on. So that's kind of where we're at on that stuff. So just finishing up the Chicagoland scores now, and then I'm going to do a quick check to see how many scores I'm missing. It'll be a lot at this point in time, so don't be surprised if I tell you I'm missing about 100 scores, because that's kind of what we're going through here. So York with another big win, so they're rolling to 8-0. That's not all that surprising. Now we're going to move to see how many Friday games we're missing. Of course, I'm missing public league scores. I noticed that right away. So right now I've got that's quite a few. We're sitting at about a little over 100. We got about 116 games that we still need to get inputted here. So basically what it comes right down to, taking a look at a couple of questions that came in here. Oak Park River Forest 4-4 team heading into a game against York next week is interesting. They'd be a tough 4-win team matchup. I agree. It's definitely a situation if they were to get in. As a 4-5 team, they'd be on a very low seed line, but definitely one of those situations where it comes down to how they got factored into the bracket and whether or not we are going to need 4-win teams to get in if they lose that game to York. So now we're looking at week 9 games could cause the biggest swing on the brackets. Well, typically we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20 to 25 games that will feature 4-4 teams playing one another. And in most situations, those are going to be win and get in type of games. So right now, those will still have to be sifted out, but there are definitely some out of there. I mentioned one already. Obviously, Bennett and Nazareth is a very interesting 4-4 game in regards to that, but there will be several others that will kind of ferret themselves out over the course of this evening. Still strong prospects that Richmond Burton goes into 3A. I wouldn't say it's strong. So far, what the results that we've gotten, I would say that they're still kind of sitting a couple of teams deep into the 4A field. That is something worth monitoring. Like I mentioned when we first came on, Madison is a small school team that has fought its way into the field this evening with the win over Anna Jonesboro. So that's going to push the line down one more team right now. But that is definitely a situation where we are, looking at that as the construct of that. Right now, the question that everyone seems to be asking on a repeated basis of what's going on with Sacred Heart Griffin in 3A. Well, I mean, in the last projection, they were at Team 95. They would need to drop to Team 97 to move into the 4A draw. They are now Team 96 after the Madison situation. So moving a little closer to 4A, but still in the 3A field. We'll look over some more things tonight and over the next 24 hours, and go from there. But right now, they're still extremely bubbly. It's just one of those situations when you have to look at it and go from there. Well, hello, sir. Hello, Edgy Tim. Sup, nerds. Thanks for checking in, boss. I appreciate that tremendous insight that you're providing. So now I'm going to go back to the scoreboard after I've looked at some of those things. Now I'm going to start wandering through some around the state scores right now that I need to fill in here. So, basically, like I said, I've got about 115 scores that I still need to input here. So I'm just going to kind of walk through those, and as I do them, kind of talk about the ones that stand out to me. There were several games tonight that I was looking at from teams that were sitting on that 4-loss bubble, and whether or not they could figure out, how to keep themselves away from that 5th loss. Because while I've talked a lot about 4-win teams getting into the field this year, there's a lot of 4-win teams that are not going to get into the field, and you can kind of tell what's going on with that. It basically in a situation where you have a lot of teams out there that are probably going to end up on the 4 and 5 line, but they're going to be nowhere near what it's going to take to get into the playoffs. Ultimately, what we're talking about here is I think we may have anywhere from, maybe a couple, 2 to 3, to maybe as high as 10 4-win teams that might potentially get into the field. There's probably 100 teams in the state of Illinois that are going to end up in the 4-win group. Maybe that's a little high. Maybe it's like 75. So, one out of every 8 or 9 teams that find themselves at 4 and 5 are actually a legitimate candidate to possibly have that as a situation that develops. Last year, it looked like this was a situation that was going to develop, and then we had a very, very crazy week 9. So once that took care of itself, over the course of that last week, we had a lot of upsets with 4 and 4 teams beating teams with better records, and that was why that didn't materialize. I still haven't got a clear picture exactly on how many of those types of games that we're going to have this year. There's always going to be a bunch where you're going to have a 4 and 4 on that last week of the season playing, a team with a 7 and 1 record or a 6 and 2 record. And basically, based on those records, you can look at it and say, hey, it seems like that, obviously the team with the better record would likely be favored since they simply play the same schedules and they've had more success. But what happened in week 9 last year was there were a lot of upsets, and there were a lot of situations where those teams rose up and knocked themselves and put themselves into the field and eliminated any chance of them getting in with 4 and 5 teams. The reason that I've been kind of not really convinced that that's not going to happen this year is, for the first time, I mean, this is the lowest amount of playoff eligible teams that we've ever had at 491 when we started the season. So when you go through that process of trying to figure out how to fill a 256 team field, you think about it, you got 491 teams, you're really only passing out about 245 wins a week. Yeah, more when you're playing some out-of-state teams. So maybe you're passing out 250 wins a week. So in that sense, I mean, it's going to be hard to get 256 teams with 5 wins or more because you're just not passing out that many wins anymore. So that's why I think that this is a trend that as long as we keep losing teams that are 11-man playoff football eligible, this is something that we'll have to look out for. I don't know how severe. Maybe we miss it again. Maybe we have another crazy week 9. Like I said, still very early in the process for me to be able to pinpoint whether or not that's actually going to be something that's going to happen. So when we look at it from that perspective, that is why that's a potential factor in the situation as it stands. So right now I'm kind of going through some of the Sangamo conference scores that I've got in here. Auburn with a 48-36 win over Olympia, kind of settling down, who's going to finish 4th, maybe 5th place in that conference. Both of those teams are probably going to make the playoffs. Olympia drops to 4-4 with that loss tonight. So they are needing that week 9 win, but they're playing a Porta team that is below 500 right now. So the odds look good for them in that situation. Now we come down to a Western Illinois Valley game that I thought was pretty interesting tonight. That is Beardstown and Hardin Calhoun. Beardstown entered the game with a 3-4 record, but was playing pretty good football. Hardin Calhoun, on the flip side, was 5-2. Before the game, I had it projected that I thought Beardstown would win that game because of their common opponents and the fact that Beardstown had fared considerably better than them in those games. So, despite the record disparity, I was right on that one. Every once in a while, that happens. So, I'll be happy about that for 2 seconds until I find a score that makes me mad because I was wrong, because that always happens too. So that's a big win right there for Benton in the Southern Illinois River to River, Ohio. A pair of 6-1 teams tonight. So that's going to show. That's going to show up primarily in seeding. I had Murfreesboro projected to win that game, so Benton's going to move up. Murfreesboro is going to move down. Both of those schools, I believe Murphy's in the 4, and both schools are in 4. I believe is that the classifications on that one. Benton's in the 3. My bad. So let's look at those. Okay, Bismarck Henning joins the ranks of the 8-0 tonight. They are now winners over Westville, 52-7. That is a comfortable margin for them. Westville drops to 4-4, but has Georgetown Ridge Farm next week, so they should get in. Now we're going to go back up to the Big 12, bouncing around here a little bit. Bloomington with a 31-7 win over Central. 731. And let's go. That's a big Northern game. So Byron, a big winner over Dixon tonight. Byron still running second in the Big Northern right now. Dixon is a playoff qualifier. They have reached 5 wins already and finished the season with winless Rock Falls next week. So looks like they will be a 6-win squad at the end of the year. At least that's what I will project. Here's the Cahokia game that we were talking about earlier. Cahokia with a comfortable win over Belleville, all top. I thought Cahokia might be able to win that game, but not by that margin. So Cahokia, the interesting thing about them is they are now 4-4. They play a very good O'Fallon team in week 9. So it is likely that they will finish 4-5 on the season. But like I mentioned before, in case you missed it, they are the South 7 Conference champions. So with it comes an automatic bid. So we are guaranteed to have one 4-win team in the field now if they indeed do lose to O'Fallon next weekend. So if Cahokia loses that game and they're at 4-5, that does not eliminate them from the chase, obviously. They have clinched a berth. So interesting little jump out from there today. So Carlinville with a very important win for their hopes, 33-0 over Greenville. That gets them into playoff mode, and Greenville, that's a tough loss for them because that drops them to 4-4. They have a good Vandalia team in week 9. So that's a bit problematic for them. Okay, so here's one of the upsets of the night that I noticed. It doesn't necessarily affect playoff status, but Mount Zion's loss to Charleston was a bit surprising this evening. Charleston entered the game with a 2-5 record. Mount Zion at 5-2. So very unexpected result there. That's going to hurt Mount Zion's seed situation. And now in the back of my mind, it leaves them a little bit in play for a potential loss next week at Breeze Mater Day. That was a game that I thought I'll have to take a better look at it over the course of the week. But that was a game that heading into there, I thought Mount Zion would be able to finish out the season with back-to-back wins here. Obviously, that gives me a little pause on that Breeze Mater Day game looking into it moving forward. So I'm going to pop back over the main screen, see what's going on. Yeah, Edge, I agree with you. I mean, this is the chalkiest season that I can ever remember. Yeah, we're not looking at a lot of teams that are underdogs that are really rising up. But like I said, last year it was a big week 9 thing. It was definitely one of those situations where we had a ton of week 9 teams pop in there and do some serious damage. So are we all screwed next week? I think definitely. I think we're definitely screwed. Paying an upset of North Mac might shake things up in seeding. Absolutely. I did have North Mac winning that game, so that's been a bouncing around in that situation, and that's basically what we're looking at. So there'll be a restack there. North Mac's going to slide down this lead board a little bit. Payne is going to move up, obviously, so that will shake up that south side of the bracket when it comes projection time. So. 3A guys, can we hit on some teams we can root for next week to knock SSG out of 3A because they are a different caliber of a team if they end up 3A? I agree with you. They would, if they stay in 3A, they will be the big time favorite. But we are, right now, it's one of those situations when you're looking at Sacred Heart Griffin. They may stay, they may not. There will be a short list of games that will probably decide this for us as we sort this out. So. Just saw a bid stealer, so I'm going to go back to the board here. Now, when I say a bid stealer, I'm talking about a team that I did not have projected to make the field that is now in because of a development from this evening, and that team is Chester. Chester won their game this evening over Red Bud. So that was a game that I was not expecting to go the way that it went. Chester entered the game at a 4-3 record. Red Bud at 6-1. So Chester has now reached 5 victories. I was not sure they were going to be able to do that. They have a tricky week 9 game with a team that is sub 500 right now out of the NUIC. So I wasn't really sure what to do with that game. But now it does not matter because Chester is in the field with a 5th victory. And that also, and you want to know about SHG, that is a helper in pushing SHG back towards 4. That was one of the teams that I had kind of pinpointed as a possible team that would move the line, and that game does that very thing. So, an interesting little bugaboo right there. So, I'm going to put in a few more scores here while we're going. So right now, like I said, I'm seeing about 5 on one side, 3 on the other. So that's going to mean some line moving. There's also a score that I heard about and have not verified yet that might make it 5 on one side and 4 on the other. So I believe I've heard that Freeburg lost this evening, and if that's the case, they go from being a very strong potential team, 4-win candidate to make the field on playoff points to a team that probably will not be able to get to 4 wins if that is indeed correct. So now I'm going to go to put the couple of Central State 8 scores in. Occasionally, if you're interested in helping out, if you can, well, I don't know where you're at in the state or if you have access to it. Occasionally, I'll rattle off a conference that I'm missing a lot of scores from at this time of evening. So, if anybody has any scores that they notice that I still have a slug this Friday on the sheet, feel free to pop them into the chat. I'll gladly take that information from wherever I can find it at this point in the evening. So, eventually, I will find most of these scores, but the quicker the better. So. Now we're looking at I just put that Chester score in. I'm going to throw this Chicago Public League score in that I just found. Actually, I'm not going to throw that score in there. Okay, so there's a Central Illinois. So yeah, this right now I'm just kind of trying to sift through these scores that I have some, I don't have some. I'm trying to figure out which ones I have, which ones I don't have. Some of them I knew already. I just haven't had the time to put them into the system. It's kind of a mishmash right now because there's a lot more information than I can keep up with as one person. So just trying to sift through it as we go. And do that. Right now, I'm going through the Heart of Illinois conference scores that I just found, putting those in there. All right, here's an interesting little tidbit. We had another undefeated team fall from the ranks this evening, Collinsville, with a narrow overtime victory over Champaign Centennial. So that's one less team from the undefeated ranks than we had before. So we're going to dip below 40 this weekend in that category and go from there. So then I'm going to put this Champaign Centennial score in there. Go back and check for some more questions. All right. There's that Salem score. All right. So if DePaul beats MCC week 9, do they have enough points to be in? I do not believe so. I think that's one of those situations where DePaul has played some very good teams. They have quite a few playoff points, but that's definitely a situation where they are, trying to figure that out. So, all right, some people are popping in some scores here. They do. That was my Salem score is verified, so I will pop that one in there. Salem with a 21-14 win tonight over Freeburg. That really stings for Freeburg. Salem entered the game with a 1-6 record, so that is not a great situation for them. We got a little bit triad over Waterloo, so that's going to be a Mississippi Valley score. That has been a super confusing conference this year, but that is a little bit of a surprise, I think. But both of those schools have already locked in playoff berths, so all that one will do is shuffle the seed a little bit in there. So get those scores in there. Moving on down. Yeah, any word on a score from Corliss Diet? I wish I had one. That's one that I'm looking for tonight. So I have not seen that one. Highland a 56-0 win. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Boy, Highland is playing some good football right now. That is a really good team that no one's talking about. So let's see. Jersey with a 42-0 win over Civic Memorial. Look at the crowd that we got going on here, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Let's go here. So, SHG, big surprise. Huge win tonight. So, sensing the sarcasm in my voice. So, 66-7 for them. Here. Got Eisenhower, 26-22. So, yeah, we're going through these a little bit slower than I usually would if I was on my own, but I do appreciate those that are sending those in. Makes it a little faster for me on the uptake. But, yeah, so that's yeah, so a lot of those are popping in right now. Just trying to get those figured out as we go. But yeah, so that one, boy, Columbia 28-27 win over Breeze Central. That is a mild upset, I think. But that another conference, the Cahokia, Mississippi, that has a lot of good teams and kind of crazy results coming in on a night-to-night basis. Let's see, that's a Northwest Upstate Illini score. Dakota is a 66-0 winner over West Carroll. So, yeah, the Northwest Upstate Illini is another one of those conferences. When you look at it on the surface, it's going to be some good teams that are kind of left out of the mix. I believe Galena lost this evening that will knock them out of the chase. But that's a team that I thought at one point in time had a chance to be a playoff team, but there's just so many good teams in that league. The losses started to mount up. So fortunate for them, but that's the way the situation goes sometimes. All right, so then I'm putting in the last of those, and now we're checking up on a few more of these. Okay, here. MacArthur barely getting past Normal University. That I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It seems like that was a little closer than I thought it would be. Okay, so then we're going to go to Central Illinois. Teresa with a big win over Shelbyville in a battle of undefeated. So there's another undefeated team falling from the ranks. That's Shelbyville's first loss of the season. Deer Creek Mackinac, a big win. Deer Creek Mackinac trying to make a rush here. They're one of the more interesting teams for me right now. They're a team that I'm watching in regards to 4 wins because they play Eureka next week, but they started 0-4 against a really strong schedule, and they'll come back and they've won their last 4 by comfortable margins. So now they've either got to rise up against Eureka next week in week 9 and get to that 5th win, or hope that their playoff points are enough to get them in a conversation for a 4-win spot if we do need them. So I think Deer Creek Mackinac is a pretty good football team despite that 500 record right now. So pretty interesting on that front. Here's one of my favorite games tonight. Dunlap beat Morton 35-34 in overtime. When you looked at this game on the board to start the week, I tried to figure out who I thought would win the game. I picked Dunlap. I was not sure. There's good reason why I was not sure. This game was a 1-point game that went into overtime. So obviously 2 pretty evenly matched teams. I like it when I get those games right, but I also like it when it validates me in thinking that they're pretty close in skills, and that's what I thought there. So tough situation for Morton now, though, because they face a Week 9 game with Washington that they have to win. And Washington's been playing a lot better on the second half of the season. So challenge right there for them. Dupo just beat Sparta. They are 4-4. Interesting matchup with probably another fellow 4-4 in week 9 with Nokomis, which will be a win and get in type of situation. Like I mentioned before, there's the Galena score that I mentioned. Galena's 5th loss of the season and 35-6 loss to Durham Pecatonica. So Dupec moves on to 6-2. So that's where we're at right now on those. People are still hitting me up with some scores there. Oh, Wes Hewitt coming through for me. Got that 12-6 Diet score. Yes. Like it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Corliss, a 12-6 winner over Diet. Those are the scores that I tend to be chasing most of the night. So an interesting situation there. So keep going here and keep popping them in. I think we're probably underneath 100 scores now. And then we're down to 80 games now that we need from Friday night. So that's moving along pretty good. And okay, there's a score that I was interested in. I saw at halftime East St. Louis was only up 6-0. Edwardsville, they end up winning that game 26-7. So that's a pretty good win for them. But Edwardsville hanging in there against the powerful Flyers. So there we go. So Effingham, I mentioned Breeze Mater Dei earlier, a team that kind of has an odd schedule as an independent. Right now, that loss will drop them to 4-4 and will put them in a game with a 5-3 Mount Zion team that surprisingly lost this evening. So I've opened up a little bit more hope for Breeze Mater Dei maybe getting into the field at 5-4. I think I at least have to investigate that a little bit more than I did heading into the week. So here's another Heart of Illinois score. I believe that's all of them now with El Paso 34, Tremont 8. So those are done. All right. So that's the South Central, and then that's Illinois. So now Prairie Central. Really like that Prairie Central team. Doing a lot of good things this year. Comfortable win over Monticello. So that's their situation. So now we're going to go look at that. All right, and then that's a Black Diamond game. So Fairfield, an easy win. Edwards County, 48-0. So that's I'm going to go find Farmington, who won comfortably this evening. Farmington going to 6-2 on the year with their win. Bolton. So then I'm going to check this again. All right, so go down to the Vermilion Valley. And Oakwood is a winner over Georgetown Ridge Farm. Oakwood's probably not going to the playoffs unless something really strange happens. Ridge Farm drops to 0-8. That's still valid for playoff point considerations. That's why we need them. East Moline picks up. Nope, they lost that game. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Galesburg, the winner in that one. Once again, another game that we need for playoff point consideration. Here's an interesting one. Geneseo, a 36-22 winner over Rock Island. So that is going to put Geneseo into the playoffs. And based on the fact that Geneseo was playing Moline in Week 9, I did not have them as a team in the field. So that is a field stealer right there. So Geneseo now in the playoffs, and you're looking at a new team in the field that I did not have in the field as of my Week 8 projections. So when we go from there, you're looking at those, and that is where we're at. So anybody's interested in going for scores, and I know a couple of you have been extremely helpful in that regards. Two that I know I'm going to have trouble finding over the course of the evening are Noble Pritzker and Noble Ronner out of the Public League, and Crane and Kennedy. So those two are, if anybody wants to go on the hunt for those are two that I need. So looking at what we're at right now, I apologize. These scores are coming in so fast I can't keep up with them. You guys are doing wonderful work, and I appreciate it. But now we're looking at trying to fill some of these gaps. I think I'm down to about 70 games or so that we still need to find. And once we do that, I can really start to get into some of the weeds in terms of what all this means this evening. I'll get a picture of how many people are already in the field and stuff like that. That's the information I usually have around the time that I try to go to sleep. But I don't sleep very much on these nights. So, okay, here's another one that I just got in that was of interest to me heading into it because I wasn't sure what was going to happen with it. Harrisburg with a comfortable win over Heron. These are two teams that I wasn't sure how big the gap was between them. That win cinches a playoff berth for Harrisburg. It knocks Heron out. So definitely a clarity game right there. Now we're going to go over here. Here's another game in the South Central Conference, Hillsboro over Piazza Southwestern. These were two teams that coming in were kind of jockeying for position in the middle of that conference. So that's an important situation for them. Now we're going to go up here to Illini West, who moved to 4-4. They have a decent amount of playoff points, but a challenging Week 9 game with currently undefeated Macomb. I don't know, to be honest with you, if that's going to be a situation that works out very well for Illini West. But have to upset in Week 9, it looks like to me, at least at this point in time, to have a chance to get in. All right, so then we're going to go here, check some more scores. All right, another battle of the undefeateds tonight. There's one more tomorrow, actually, between Morgan Park and Simeon, but there were three tonight. Johnston City is a 37-28 winner over White County. So that is definitely one of those things that we need to factor out. So Kansas City, 37-28. So then we've got that was in earlier. Okay, there's Lena Winslow. Lena Winslow, another big win tonight. Moves them to 8-0. I just thank you, Derek. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're moving on up. We're getting there closer. Okay, so now we're sitting at 63 games to get in here. So I'm going to pop over here, see what's going on. Yep. Okay, somebody just gave me the Genoa Kingston score. I know I don't have that one. All right, so there's that. Oops, that was not what I wanted to do. Okay, so moving on up. All right, so there's one that I know that I don't have. Lincoln with a 52-19 win over Taylorville. Okay. So as you can see, we're starting to wind them down a little bit. And let's go here. There's an interesting one. We lost another one from the undefeated group. So Belvedere North lost tonight. Chesney Park Harlem with a big win over them. So that puts them into the situation. Like I mentioned before, we've got Macomb here, still riding that undefeated train. Went over Havana. Okay. So scores are creeping in here. Some of these scores I've seen, but I'm waiting to get confirmation on them, or I just saw it earlier tonight when I was not around my computer, so I'm just filling in gaps. Some of these games that I still show as not having the final, and it's just a matter of me not quite getting to them typing wise yet, as opposed to not having them. There's that Madison game that I was talking about. Madison. I'll tell you a little bit about Madison while we're at it. Madison's an independent, and they only played 8 games this season. Heading into tonight, the combined wins of the teams that they had beaten was only 4. So I was having a really hard time getting a read on how good they were and whether or not they would be able to put together enough wins. They close the season next week with a 2-6 Trenton Westland team, which I think they should be able to beat, especially after they beat Anna Jonesboro, who, despite the fact they're 2-6, play in a better conference and are a larger school. So I thought that Madison would have trouble winning that game, based on a couple people I'd talked to that had seen them. So I just didn't get that one right. That happens sometimes when you're trying to gauge 491 teams and the merits of all of them. So I'm not surprised Madison won that game. It was what I would have classified in a group of about 20 games this week that I thought were straight toss-ups. So interesting in that sense. Let's see here. I got to put that Marion Carmelo game in. Let's keep going here. Royal Forsyth, I do not have that one in. Okay. So I hope I'm not boring y'all too much here. I'm just trying to go through the process here. And ordinarily, scores depends on my cycle is usually around now. I'm usually wrapping the scores up around 1 or 1:30 in the morning, most nights. So I'm on pace of where I usually would be. So that was where we're at. Sometimes I'm a little farther along. Sometimes I'm a little less interested. So uh, while I'm doing some of this and I'm filling in some of these scores that maybe don't have a huge impact on the playoffs, I'll tell you a little bit about next week and what we have planned. I won't be covering a game next Friday night, which ordinarily would make me cry. But on week 9, I like to try to monitor everything as it's happening. So we're gonna have a live stream event on Friday Night Drive where myself and Jake Bartleson are just gonna kind of go through the evening's events as they're happening. Try to get some live updates on games and presents. And as they're coming in, talking about those finals and how they affect the impact of the field. When we do that, and the end goal is going to be like it always is for me, is to update those playoff projections kind of in real time. When surprises come in, when things that you're not expecting happen, we're going to be looking for that those games and how the upsets affect them. I'm hoping in my mind's eye that it's not as crazy as it was last week 9, but I am hoping for some things to talk about. So it should be something that's interesting. We're going to do that for a large chunk of the evening, and then maybe if Jake gets tired of me, which I could totally understand, I might switch over to a solo form later in the evening as I'm going through and kind of rejiggering the brackets from week to week. So that is our plan for next week. While I let you know that, now we're down to we're running this down pretty good. We're getting it down here. We got it down to 53 games, 52 games actually that I still need from tonight. So keep moving along here. There are Saturday games next week. There are actually quite a few of them. I believe there are 22 games on Saturday. So that's definitely a wrinkle. One of the things that I was talking about last night from some of the Thursday finals that really irritated me was I discovered that there's going to be a 4-4 game played on Saturday morning between two pretty evenly matched public league teams. And the problem with that is winner gets in, loser doesn't. And unlike most situations where maybe you might have a class division, you might have a class 3A team playing a 4A team. This is a situation where you have a 1A team or a 4A team. So if I'm wrong and I put the wrong team in, then it's going to shift 3 classes on the outcome of a Saturday morning game. So that's definitely a situation that we have to keep monitoring on Saturday morning. So there always is 1 or 2 games on Saturday that pretty much have a pretty big impact on the shape of the field. That always happens. One of the rules about that a lot of people don't know, you're not allowed to start a game past 1 p.m. on Saturday. So all the games kind of got to be tied up by 4 o'clock. So then, if we haven't already kind of established that field, um, and that's where we're at. So kind of sitting around, it's kind of like that the NCAA tournament thing on that final day where they wrap up the conference championship games by X amount of time so we can have the selection show. So that's a similar type of situation. So very interesting. Some outcomes that happen, around those times. So just got that. I'm trying to find that. Where the heck did that other team go? That's interesting. I'm missing a slog in for one of my teams here. That's very interesting. I'll have to find it later. That's not important right now. Oh, there they are. Right at the top. That's why I can't find them. Yeah, so Nokomis barely beating Oblong tonight is not a good sign for Nokomis, but once again, they are a 4-4 team playing next week, and we'll figure that out as we go. So another undefeated team knocked off and quite comfortably. Peoria goes down tonight, losing to Normal West. So that's yet another one. So I think we've lost 4 of those tonight, and I knew we were going to lose 2, but I was not expecting 4. So that list is now dropped down to 37. We'll lose at least 1 more tomorrow. Okay, so next up is O'Fallon. They won 52-0 tonight. Oh, I know you're down here. There you are. is 28-21. Okay. So down to it. And then Big Northern, we got Oregon. I apologize if my dogs start barking here at some point in time. They are sitting here on the floor quite nicely, but that won't last. So I'll just warn you that that may happen. Okay, so by a thread now. Sherrard drops to 1 and 7. There we go. Okay, so I'll pop back in here, see what's going on. All right. 32-24. I thought there for Anawan Weathersfield. Okay. Got Mercer County over Stark County. Winnipeg over North Boone, 41-12. All right, so next up is some middle line I score. Pekin stays undefeated. 49-6. Okay. Okay. All right. 42 more games to go. $48-0. Okay. And Revis North 49-8. So Revis is in now. That was a team that I was not entirely sure that they were going to get to 5 wins, but they have done that now. I believe I had them in the field, though, so it's not changing anything per se. Another win for Red Hill. That now, rather than as a member of the Lincoln Trail, or the Little Illini, but they play most of those teams now, so almost the same difference. Maybe that'll change in time. Let's see. Richmond Burton. I had the score already. Robinson beat Paris. Bounced back from last week. Okay. Going over Guilford. Okay. Oops. That's not right. Oops, if we don't type nonsense in there. Okay. Rockridge beat Quaney. 42-14. All right, so still feeding me here. Oh, no, 29. Okay. All right, so yeah, no, that's a good win for them. I thought they were going to get in anyway because they've got Marquette next week. I thought that was a win, but that puts them in the field. That'll move them up on the seed lines. They're down near the bottom on the south side of the bracket that they're in, but That will change after that win. Rushville with a 50-16 win. Monmouth United. That one. Okay. So, Susser 2012. Black Diamond scores in. All right, 57-14. So let's take a look at this. Toronto wins that 12. No Quincy Notre Dame won tonight. I cannot remember the score. Concord Triopia wins their game 34-30. And in Unity 46-0. See, game 148-0. I thought it was. I couldn't remember. Okay. So, Litchfield. I didn't have that one. It's 12, 7, 12. Okay. We're down to 26 games, so getting there. Okay, Tuscola, 52-0. Latham. Okay. 42-21. Right. So let's. Sure, some of these that I'm flying over right now, you guys have already posted. But I'm limited into how many comments I can see, so I might ask you to repost if posted one of the scores that you see that I'm missing. Anybody seen a Bradley Bourbonnais Stag score from this evening? I know that's one that I have not seen. Okay, Wheaton Academy up 48-0. 8. All right. Okay. Moving along rather nicely here. Thank you, sir. $34-0. 43-6. That was the one I was confused with. 43-6. Okay. I could have swore I saw the Knoxville score. I must have skipped right over that. I did skip right over that. Okay, 41-7 on that one. Okay, then we've got to check this one. I do not see that one. All right, so where are you finding these scores, Wes? You're the champion this evening. Good job. I'm down to just a couple of public league scores, which makes me very happy. And I know I saw the Newman Central Catholic Mendota score before, but I don't seem to have it. So if anybody has it sitting around, I'll take it. My cat seems to have an opinion on it. There it is. I found the Sterling Newman score. And yes, we are a virtual animal farm in this house. See here. There we go. There's that Rockford score I was looking for. Thank you, Weather. All right, moving on up. We are at 12 games. I work through the projections every week. What has been the most interesting class to follow? I think this year, when I look at that, it's probably a tie between 4 and 5A, just because of the landscape of the way that those classes are going. We've noticed we've had a lot of conversation about Sacred Heart Griffin, and then them not being possibly not being in 4A and settling into 3. And that's definitely something that that has caused a lot of conversation. But for me, it's been interesting to watch in 4A too, because you've got some teams that you traditionally think as in 5A that are pushing down into 4A. So it's making for a lot of interesting potential matchups that you would consider to be 5A playoff games in the past that are now 4A games. So that's been real interesting. And that's been something that I really looked at, throughout the situation that we've been in all season, trying to figure those out. So, um, one's got me here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. 7430. Thank you for that, Anthony. That helps me out. Gets me closer here. And Black Diamond was one that I was missing quite a few from. 74. Eldorado one's 4828. So that's one of those. All right. So that should put us in the neighborhood of one screen, and it does. Now we're down to the fantastic 10 games, folks. Let's see what we can do here. All right, so I am looking for Cumberland and who are they playing tonight? Argenta. And maybe that one was already posted, but I may have missed it as well. I have Arthur. I just flew right past it. So that's one's done. All right. So I'm looking for Elmwood and Lewistown. Carterville. Oh boy, you've got me another public league school. Whether you are the man. Carterville, 49-14. So for all your help, everyone. This is making the process a lot easier tonight. Appreciate it. Hopefully we can all team up and do the same next weekend. So we're sitting at like 7 games here, so this is not too problematic. All right. I'm being told that the Cumberland game is on Saturday. This is something that happens seemingly all the time. Get games moved, and then they either don't tell the state or they tell the state too late, because I check the games every week, and that one I did not have as a Saturday game. So, all right. So now we are moving real well down here. Mount Vernon, you got that one. Okay, so Mount Vernon 35-7 over Centralia. I thought I saw that one. Okay. Now we're down to 5 games that we need. Let's see, check here. See if I can find a couple of these. All right. This is not surprising that I'm missing a few of these. These are still missing that Streamwood Fenton score, which is odd. That's usually one that I have by now. So I'm going to check a couple other places here. See if I can track down the ones that I'm missing. And once again, it's really possible, and if anybody knows, I mean, if you knew that some of these games that I'm missing are a Friday night game. Because right now we're missing Kennedy and Crane. and then Rockford East and Freeport, Lewistown and Elmwood, Belvedere and Hononegah, Streamwood and Fenton. Those are the 5 games right now that I do not have scores for. So I'm trying to find out whether or not those are Saturdays. I have a question that I'd also like to answer. Um, I've been asked at what point next weekend will you have a pretty good idea of the brackets? Basically, it kind of comes down to when I get the scores in. So that's the situation where I need certain scores to come in to kind of set the field. And there have been times when I've been able to set the field at, like 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday night. And then I will go through the process of trying to restack the brackets. And sometimes when I know that changes are going to be made, um, I can start to restack the brackets even before I get the field set. And that's what I'll try to do next week. Um, so it's kind of a complicated answer. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. But once we get through all of this stuff from week 8, I'll have probably a list of 20 to 25 games that I will need in order to move forward. So, we're getting those more. Yeah, there we go. Freeport 42 and 8. There we go. So Geneseo 4A or 5A. Right now, I would say Geneseo uh, is probably a 4A team. I haven't really looked that carefully at them. Um, as of last week, they were kind of on the fence as a possible 4 and 5 team getting in. They obviously don't have to worry about that anymore, so I have to take a better look at them. I think right now, if I had to guess off the top of my head without educating myself, I believe they are a 4A team. So let's see. I know West posted another one of them scores up there for me. 34 to 8. Okay. So now we are at 2 games. Kennedy Crane, Fenton, and Streamwood. Those are the only ones. So okay, so yes, Geneseo would scramble up the seeds a little bit in that 4A bracket, but they probably sneak in the bottom and they might change the landscape of the bracket. So there might be a team right now that is in the north bracket that would get moved south. My initial guess would be that might actually be Morris. So that would definitely change the landscape of the 4A bracket. So that was the question just asked about what Geneseo would do. So I'm going to post real quick on Twitter here and just ask if anybody has these 2 missing scores, and go from there. I'm trying to figure out. Let's see here. Some people are sending me stuff on Twitter. Yeah, we got that one. How dangerous do you think Reed Custer is in 3A? Do you think they have something? We all know I see as a 6 seed favorite. I think that's an interesting matchup if they do play each other. I'm really impressed with Reed Custer. I've seen them live once. I think they're a really, really good team. I see Catholic next week. They have a game against Wheaton St. Francis, so they could potentially be a 7 team with a fairly low seed, which means someone like Reed Custer could maybe run into IC Catholic as early as the second round, which is not my favorite thing about the current way that things are done. But that's the reality of the situation. So now I'm going to do a little bit of number crunching here right now, just give some facts out. Right now we have 29 teams that are undefeated. That have moved to 8-0. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 more that are playing tomorrow. So the most we can end up with at the end of the weekend is 34, as two of those six that are playing tomorrow are playing each other. So the most we'll end up with is 34. So that's a little bit lower than I expected. So we did have some teams fall this evening. So we've got now we've got. Let's go down here and see. Um, we have 130 teams that have clinched playoff berths. That means they have 6 wins or more, and there are now 211 teams that have 5 wins or more. So that's a pretty high number. That's a little bit higher than I thought it was going to be. So, and then you're seeing now the large cluster of 4-win teams. So we've got some teams tomorrow that can add to that list. So 211 is a lot. I'll put it that way. That's a pretty high number. I think we'll get a couple more tomorrow out of that 4-3 group. In fact, it looks like more than a couple more. So that number is going to be sitting around 215, I think. So that's pretty interesting to me. On in the nutshell right now, just looking at it, that's quite a few. So a healthy group of those teams that are already in with 5 wins, which means, but I want to be clear. I'm not saying that means that we're not going to have 4-win teams make the playoff field. Um, that's I won't dismiss that yet. I just think there are too many teams that will enter the weekend 4-4 playing teams with better records, and all those teams are not going to lose. We learned that last year, but I think there's definitely a situation where we'll have more teams than less teams. So that's about where we're at tonight. I could go through and do a little bit more breakdown in terms of what I think the classifications are going to be, but that would be some heavy computer lifting to do right now. So, and I don't think I probably wouldn't be able to get a real clear picture tonight before my brain melts into the fog. So, if there are any other questions I can answer, I'd be happy to try to do so right now before signing off for the evening. But other than that, I think we've reached our nadir of following the results tonight. Um, Interesting evening. I'll be posting throughout the weekend on Twitter on what I find through Saturday games. And obviously, next week there'll be a new projection. My timeline for doing it is I usually spend a lot of time on Saturday and Sunday working on that stuff. Um, no, actually, here's a question about Coal City and Morris. Right now, I have Coal City projected in the South bracket. So basically, what's happening here is we have to figure out what team is getting removed from the 4A bracket to make room for Geneseo. So let me experiment with this for a minute, just out of curiosity. So um, this is last week's projections. These are sorted by enrollment. So what would happen here, theoretically, we're just talking about putting Geneseo in the bracket. So we're going to put Geneseo in this bracket instead of the largest school in the classification, who is now going to move into 5A. Metamora slides back down into 5A, leaving a spot open in the South bracket. All right. So the spot in the South bracket would have to go to one of the teams in the North bracket, who is the farthest south. That, without having my map in front of me, I believe that team is Morris. Coal City is already in the South bracket, so they would not be removed. So Morris would go into the South bracket with as an 8-1 48 team. So that's the projection for them. Obviously, they have a very difficult game next week, so that could also be a 7-2 team. But Morris would move into the South bracket. If they win next week against Sycamore, as with them, 8-1 48 is, I'll move them in as the number 3 seed in the bracket. And then Geneseo would move in as a 5-4 with a fairly decent amount of points. So they're probably coming in as like a 12 or a 13, somewhere in this neighborhood right here around Phillips and Providence. Morris would be removed, so that your seed stack would be removed. It would be Burton, St. Francis, Hyde Park, Good, Joliet Catholic, Noble Comer, Rochelle and Dixon on the top half, Evergreen Park, Ridgewood, wherever Geneseo fell, either right there, possibly right there. So then, and then they just factored down into that situation. Wheaton Academy would stay the 16, Sullivan the 15, Marengo the 14 as such. So Geneseo would slot somewhere between, around, or above Phillips and Providence in that bracket. So that's the scenario. That's the quick scenario that I'm looking at in regards to Geneseo and Coal City. So those are last week's projections that I just showed you. Obviously, there'll be some different teams in the situation from what we learned tonight. Like, for example, we look at the 5A bracket. We're going to have to make room for Burlington Central in this group. They factor in somewhere around here, so they'll add into the projection. They'll be on obviously on the north side of the bracket, and then it will move Grace Lake Central down into the 6A bracket, where they will be taking the space that was previously by Cary Grove. So that's how that works. That's a simple swap. But then, like, for example, now we'll go to 1A and we'll talk about we have to add Madison into the bracket. Enrollment wise, they're one of the smallest schools in the bracket. So they're going to go in there somewhere as the enrollment. They'll be on the south side of the bracket. And then one of the big schools, this one, Bloomington Central Catholic, for the time being, would be pushed into the 2A field. So that's how that works in terms of who goes in and who goes out. Let's look at Highland. All right. So Highland is in the 5A bracket, I believe, but I'm not positive about that. Sometimes I slip up on this memory. So Highland, right there, okay, is slated as a 3 seed in the South bracket. So, but if Morris were to move down, Morris, as you can see, if they beat Sycamore, they would slide ahead of Highland because they're projected to finish with 48 points as opposed to 46 points for Highland. So Morris would go to the 3, Highland to the 4, Murfreesboro the 5, Rochester the 6, Waterloo 7, Mount Zion 8, and so. But like obviously still be some movement in here in terms of that. Like for example, Metamora is not even in this bracket anymore. But these will be updates that will be made based on what happened this evening. There's the Highland question. So that's where we're at on those types of topics. Basically, I want to say, and Edgy was here earlier talking about that a little bit, still pretty chalky. There was not a lot tonight that really upset the apple cart. There were a couple of small games that I thought might go the other way potentially. There wasn't a ton of movement tonight. I'm looking at it right now, and I think the brackets, for the most part, and who's in each classification, are not going to see massive amounts of change. That's really what it comes down to. So I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup work here. You're welcome to hang around if you want and pop up any more questions that you may have. But other than that, I think I'm gonna let her ride until like 1:30 here, unless if any more questions pop up that I can answer, and then from there we will call it a night. And thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate it. I may have rambled on a little bit here, but and hopefully if you enjoyed this, you'll come back next week and join us again as we and I'll drill down a lot more on like what it actually means when those games are coming, as those games are coming in. Obviously, with not being at a game and being able to get to the scores right when they come in, I won't be scrambling as much as I would fully expect to be pretty much done with score collection at about 11 o'clock next week. That's usually when I'm pretty much done. And then we'll go from there. And then I'll be able to really get into the weeds about, because I will do a lot of hypothetical scenarios heading into the week. Like what happens if this happens and what happens if this happens. So got a question about Edwardsville right now. Edwardsville has been floating through 7A, back and forth through 7 and 8A. The thing to notice about them is you kind of got to look at the construction of who's going to be in 8A. So um, you look at that, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint it right now. But you look at the general sheet right now, and Edwardsville slots in at what? Let's see where they're at. Trying to find them. Yeah, they're at 438 on the board, I'm sorry, 437 on the board. There's a reason why when I use numbers, it doesn't always match up. Line number one is the label line, so every number that you see there. So of the teams on the enrollment board, Edwardsville is 437. Um, they're actually 438 because Loyola jumps above them because of their playing up arrangement. So you have to start counting down from 492 and see how many teams are already in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is not easy to do with anybody other than the 7 and 1A, 2A, and 3A, 4A. But I'm just going to go through the process right now just because I'm curious more. This is a curious question for me. I want to know the answer to it. So um, I would say, just looking at it, that they are leaning 8A. There are 24 teams that have already reached 5 wins between them and the bottom of the enrollment line. And then I'm seeing at least 6 4-4 teams. And then there are a couple of Saturday games that factor into this too. So if if there are 32 teams below them on that marker, then they stay 7A. But the fact that that number looks like it's at 29 or 30 right now gives me the hunch that they're probably going to be projected to 8A next week. And that's kind of how you can eyeball it and see what the likelihood is of it. Dixon host if Geneseo moves into the bracket. I believe that they would in that situation because even though Geneseo got their win tonight, I do not think they're going to win next week. So Dixon potentially, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look because I don't want to say something out of line here. Okay. Yeah, Dixon is projected as a 6-win team. So as long as they hold and get to that 6-win mark, they would be seated ahead of Geneseo because Geneseo is only a 5-win team. So the 6-win teams head off the pass ahead of the 4-win teams. So that's where that would go. So yeah, if those two teams were to meet, say, in an 8-9 game, that would be hosted by Dixon. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I think that's right. Yep. So as long as they're a 6-win. Okay, Triad. Let's look at those guys. All right, so then let's go here. The win tonight helped them, obviously. So let's see. They're gonna be doing okay for themselves. I think that win tonight helped them to a probable. Let's see. They could really go up nicely here. Yeah, they're gonna leapfrog Kankakee in that scenario. So I think a 6 is a possibility for them. So not bad. That was a good one. Okay. Simeon and Prairie Ridge still looking like 5A. I would say Simeon looks slightly better than Prairie Ridge in this situation. Prairie Ridge, I believe, is now on the bubble. They were one team off the bubble, but I think after you factor in everything that came into play and what's going on, that they either are going to stay exactly where I have them right now, which is team 158 and team 159, and they would have to go to 161. And Simeon is ahead of Prairie Ridge in that list by one student. So Simeon is a 158. Okay, so I think right now it's about the same. Would Sterling stay in the 5A South bracket, even though it's up near the I-88 corridor? You know, Sterling, from a geographical perspective, is one of the hardest teams to peg in state because they claim that it's a north-south line division, but sometimes they've dragged Sterling into the north bracket when it looks like they should be in the south, and sometimes they've moved them into the south when it looks like they should be in the north by the strictest of rules. So it just it's kind of based on the construction of the rest of the bracket. So I think they kind of use them wherever they need to put them. So there's really no concrete. They claim it's a concrete rule, but it's really not. So there have been times when I thought that they were going to be a team in the 5A bracket, and now they're not. So definitely a situation where it's hard to tell. I will look at my map again this week, see if there's a clear thing to it. I map everybody and then I kind of eyeball it based on what I think is the logical solution. It isn't always the solution that the IHSA uses. All right, based on last week, Anawan Weathersfield was on the north side of the bracket, and these are things that I would usually have sorted, but these are, like I said, these are last week's projections. They are not updated yet. This is something that I will do over the next day or two with the new information. So right now I have them sitting as a number 4 seed in the north bracket. That hasn't changed much based on what I've seen tonight. I believe everything that I'm looking at around it has gone the way I thought it would. The bracket will change. There will be a new team joining the North bracket. I don't have my map in front of me right now. I think it would be someone like Salt Fork that would be going up to the North bracket to take up the spot that's given to Bloomington Central Catholic, which moved down to 2A because of the move with Madison. So that's the way that goes. There are a couple of things that could change that as well. Richards is a very, very shaky team. They were the Chicago Public League team that I was talking about before that is playing a 4A team on that last Saturday that I just don't know who's the better team there. So, in a nutshell, that is what I think is the situation for them. So, um, okay, let's. I got a question about Moroa Forsyth and what's the probability of them going north. I don't think that this is really something that is likely to happen. But one of the things that you have to consider about that scenario is St. Joe Ogden is a team that has been kind of bouncing between 2A and 3A in terms of what class that they're in. And right now they're on the north side of the bracket. So if they leave 2A and go back to 3A, then there would be a spot in the 2A bracket. Now, my initial inclination is that spot would probably, of the teams that are in, would probably be Westville that would make that move into the North bracket before any of the teams kind of in that Decatur area. But to be fair, um, if there was a double shift of some kind, they'd be a candidate. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they could possibly move north. Um, it would take some doing to make that happen, just kind of based on the construction of the field and the fact that if there were teams to move in and out of the bracket, um, they tend to be teams on the south side of the bracket. Although, like I said, St. Joe Ogden is one team, and then Winnebago is another that has kind of been floating between 2 and 3A. So if somehow both of those teams got shifted out, and then the replacements from 3A or from 1A or 2A or whoever came in weren't clearly teams that took their places in the North bracket, we might have a conversation on our hands. I probably should know this because I'm on it, but What time the playoff pairing shows start next Saturday night? It's actually a little bit different than they've done it. The last couple of years, we've done it in a format different than the days when we did the whole 2 hour show on Comcast Sports in Chicago. Now I'm involved in a broadcast that is through the IHSA network, pre-gaming the playoff pairings, and then they have an hour-long playoff pairing show where the pairings are revealed, and then I come back on for another hour after the pairings are revealed, where we talk about the brackets themselves and what we think of them and where we think the strengths and weaknesses are. So that is, I probably should know exactly when that happens. I believe that our pregame show starts at 7. The brackets are revealed at 8. Our postgame show starts at 9. So I believe that is the scenario. I could be wrong about that. So that's the breakdown of the times. Oh, thanks for doing this. I enjoyed doing it very much, and I'm glad you guys liked it as well. Like I said, it's fun for me. It's a hobby that's gotten completely out of control, but and I want to thank everyone who was here and some people that have left that helped me with scores and stuff of that nature. And those of you that have helped me with scores even before we came tonight, there are several of you that have been very, very helpful in trying to track these down. So the only way that I can do this is that I have all the information. I don't like to do it with 95% of the information. So I have to have all the scores, and some of you have been really, really helpful in getting them to me quicker, because the quicker I get them, the quicker I can do the projections. So, and then especially when we get down into like week 8 and week 9, the projections become pretty clear and you can do them pretty fast. So I'm hoping for the day we get a 1 to 32 bracket on all 8 classes, because then I don't have to do a lot of mapping and I can do it even faster. I think I can do some of them like in real time, like when I have results and I'll know how they're changing. But yeah, this has been fun. I'm glad you guys liked it, and hopefully if you enjoyed it, you'll be back next week, and you can follow along with us on week 9 Friday night. So with that being said, I appreciate it, and thanks a lot for coming by, and once again, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're not already and you're kicking it around, this is the kind of stuff that you can find all the time on Friday Night Drive. So if you haven't considered subscribing beforehand, I'm even more thorough in the amount of information that I put out there about this and breaking it down. It's all over Friday Night Drive the entire time, and we do a lot of stuff in the playoffs too, breaking it down and things like that. So if you've thought about it and just haven't thought, maybe it's not for you, if you've enjoyed this evening, you'll enjoy Friday Night Drive. So I hope you consider subscribing, and thanks a lot for those. And those of you that already are, thanks a lot for your support. It allows us to keep doing the things that we're doing. So thanks a lot. And I think I'm going to sign off now, and I hope everyone has a good night and had a good time this evening. Thanks.